Hi everyone, Bruno Luce here with GLB Productions. I think many of you will remember our old friend, the ACP88. Our church has, since the time the last video was made, has gone to a digital mixer, and as a result the ACP88 is no longer needed in our main building. As a result, we've placed it in this mobile rack where it can be pushed around and serve for sound reinforcement in different parts of the churches. Now, as a result of the last video, many of you have requested that I make a video showing the back of the unit and showing the way in which it is interfaced with a mixer. That's what we're going to do today. I'll show you the back of the unit, how it's connected, the cables that you need to make that connection, as well as how to connect it both using the insert points of a mixer as well as connecting the unit inline between the mixer and your power amplifiers or processing unit. I'd like to introduce you to what is called an insert cable. Now, the reason it's called an insert cable is that it's used in conjunction with the insert points on the mixer. Let's begin by talking about the cable itself. Now, in Singapore, we refer to this type of cable as stereo unbalanced cable. In other words, it is two unbalanced cables which have been joined together so that they run alongside each other. So inside each of these, you have one core wire and one braided shield. So altogether, this contains two core wires and two shield wires which will need to be soldered. Now, on one end of the cable, you can see it's broken out into a pair of unbalanced connectors. So each of these is wired in the normal unbalanced way. You solder the signal wire to the tip and you solder the shield to the sleeve connector. Now, if I open this up, you can see how this is connected. You have the shield, which is soldered to the sleeve connector, and you have the signal carrying core wire, which is soldered to the tip of the plug. Now, on the other end of the cable, this is where things get interesting. You'll see that both of the signal wires are combined into this tip ring sleeve connector. So in this connector, one core wire is soldered to the tip, one core wire is soldered to the ring, and both shields are combined and soldered to the sleeve. I'll just open that to show you how it works. Okay, right, so you can see the inside of the TRS connector. You have the red signal wire, which in this case goes to the ring, the white signal wire, which in this case goes to the tip, and the combined, right at the bottom there, you can see the combined shield wires, which are both soldered to the sleeve. Here's a view of all three connectors. Note that there is this piece of red heat shrink on one of the unbalanced connectors. This designates the tip connector. So this one here is wired to the tip. This one here is wired to the ring, and the two shields are combined into the sleeve wire there. When you make these up or when you have them made, it's very important that this designation be provided, and you'll see why later. Here you can see the top panel of the mixer and all of the connectors at the top here. If you zoom in on the individual connectors, you'll see that from the top you have a microphone connector for connecting microphones, a line-in connector for tape recorders, CD players, that sort of thing. And then in the center you have this rather mysteriously labeled insert point. Now, the insert point functions as both an output as well as an input on the same TRS connector. The tip functions as the send, the ring as the return, and the sleeve is a common ground. So you have an output and an input on the same connector. In most cases, the signal is taken immediately after the gain knob On this Mackie, it is taken just after the low cut filter. Now, the way in which this works is it enables you to take a signal out of the mixer, run it through an outboard device like the ACP88, and then return it to the channel on the same connector. Some professional boards will have separate send and return connectors, but a combined connector is what you will find on most consumer and lower end professional setups. So what you do is, you take the insert cable that I showed you just now, and you plug the TRS side into the insert point on the mixer. That leaves you the split side where you have two unbalanced connectors, which is then connected to the back of the ACP88, and I'll show you how that's done now. Here you can see the back of our equipment rack. Although it's partially obscured by cabling, you can see the ACP88 in the middle there. The back of the ACP88 is divided into 8 identical connector panels, one for each channel, in the same way that the front is divided. If we zoom in, we can see this particular one here is labeled channel 5, and going from the top to the bottom, you have a gate side chain connector, a compressor side chain connector, and then an input and an output. Now the gate and compressor side chain connectors are used when you want to trigger the gate or compressor from a source that is separate to that which is connected to the input and output. For example, say you want to trigger the compression on the bass guitar using the signal from the kick drum channel. You'd patch the bass guitar in normally, and then you'd run a connector from the kick drum channel to the input of either the gate or the compressor, depending on what you want to use as your control signal. I won't explain that any further in this video because that's the subject of a separate video, and it's considered quite an advanced dynamics control technique. What we will concern ourselves with today is the input and the output connectors. Now, if you recall, on the top of the unit we plugged in our TRS connector to the insert point of the channel. We then had remaining our two unbalanced connectors. So you can see here we have one that's labeled tip. The other unbalanced is, of course, the ring connector. So what you would do is you would take the tip connector and plug that into the input, and the ring connector and plug that into the output. I'll show you how that's done. Tip connector connects to the input. The other one here connects to the output. All right. And you have now successfully patched your ACP88. Bearing in mind, of course, that on the back of the unit, the numbering for the channels runs from right to left. So channel 1 is on the right and channel 8 is on the left. The other thing which we should discuss while we're here is the switch next to the inputs and outputs here, which is labeled +4 dBu and -10. Now this is the level selector switch, which will tell the ACP88 what sort of gear you're working with. With professional level gear, it should always be in the out position, the +4 dBu position. If you're working with semi-professional gear or gear that you know operates at a lower level than professional gear, you would push it in for a -10 dBV setting. If in doubt, leave it in the +4 dBu setting, in other words, in the out position. Now, so far I've shown you how to connect the ACP88 using the insert points on the channels. What about if you want to use the ACP88 to compress the output of your entire mixer? This is known as a serial connection, where the ACP88 sits in between your mixer and your power amplifier. If you look in the top right hand corner of your screen, you can see the two main outputs from your mixer. Because the ACP88 does not have XLR connectors, the easiest way to accomplish this is to use standard guitar cables. They are unbalanced, but because in this case the distance that we're running is extremely short, less than a meter, you can use unbalanced connectors fine. If your amplifier rather was a great distance from your mixer, you would use the XLR connectors and you would need to use the appropriate adapter to go in and out of the ACP88. So to begin with, you take a standard guitar cable, you can see the connector here, and you would plug this into the output of your mixer. Right? If your mixer does not have jack outputs, once again, you would need to use the appropriate adapter. We'll now go to the back of the ACP88 and show how we complete the connection to the power amplifier. Once again, we're here at the back of the ACP88, and you would take the guitar cable, which we plugged into the output of the mixer, and you would connect this to the input on the ACP88, as you can see there. The next thing is to connect the output of the ACP88 to the input of your power amplifier. So taking another guitar cable, you connect one end to the output, and then as we zoom out here, you can see in the bottom right of your screen, these are the inputs to the power amplifier. So you would take the other end of your guitar cable and connect to the power amplifier. And that completes the serial connection of the ACP88. So that concludes our video on how to connect the ACP88. We've covered both how to connect the unit using the insert points on the individual channels, as well as how to connect the unit in between pieces of gear. For example, between your mixer and your power amplifier, so that it can be used to compress and limit the output of the entire mixer. I hope this has answered your questions. The ACP88 is a very versatile piece of gear, and it's very useful in a variety of situations. Thanks again for all your questions and comments. Keep them coming. This is Bruno Luce from GLB Productions saying thanks a lot, and I'll see you again. Bye-bye.